Welcome to Futures Fast Forward and our continuing look at opportunities in the lumbering industry in Pennsylvania. Previously in this series, we looked at some traditional aspects of this industry as we learned about career positions that are available at lumber mills, out in the field, and the education you would need to pursue these paths. We also began our look at traditional lumbering companies that have expanded their businesses by development of a niche product. In part 2, we're going to continue our look at Brookville Wood Products and their Brookville Bats division. We'll get an inside look at their operation and what it takes to make these high-quality bats for players from Little League to the majors. We'll also stop in at Allegheny Mountain Hardwoods Flooring of Emlenton for an interview with Dan Hickman. We'll talk about his family lumbering company's expansion into the hardwood custom flooring market and what opportunities exist in that field today. Part 2 of Lumbering in Pennsylvania, today on Futures Fast Forward.
This episode of Futures Fast Forward is brought to you by our friends at Miller Welding and Machine Company, Brookville, Pennsylvania. We provide our customers with high-quality parts by continually improving the processes we use, and we provide our employees a safe and satisfying work environment and invest in their futures by constantly investing in new technologies. For current news and employment opportunities, visit our website at millerwelding.com. Futures Fast Forward is brought to you in part by Du Bois Business College, providing quality post-secondary education for over a century. Their commitment is to develop programs that enable their graduates to be successful in their field of study. And they work closely with businesses and set programs that correctly mirror current industry trends and the modern use of technology. With 3 campuses in central Pennsylvania, Du Bois Business College can help you touch your future faster. Visit them on the web at dbcollege.com.
This is a pretty big operation, Brookville Wood Products. Tell me a little bit about how this operation started, how old the business is.
Well, it's over 40 years old. The Mitchell family began the business and serving mostly the furniture industry, a little bit of the flooring industry, but I was saying a little bit earlier how, it's important to diversify, especially in the wood products industry today, finding new niches and opportunities. And one of ours was the fact that we were supplying a lot of the billets to other bat manufacturers, so that's one of the reasons why we got into making bats. So the company supplies a lot of product to the furniture industry. It's used to be almost exclusive to that, and so it's dropped over the last, say, 10 years, but now it's more flooring industry, baseball bat industry, not just with our bats, but we do sell billets to other manufacturers. And there's also a lumber mill that provides wood to either cabinet shops or furniture manufacturers, quite a few other, we'll say, all interior hardwood industry. We've began making our own brand of bats 5 years ago. Some of the things you're going to see here are some of the players we manufacture bats for. One of them is Johnny Damon here of the New York Yankees. You see some of his old Red Sox stuff when he won the World Series. The local person here from St. Mary's is Adam Fox. He plays in the Texas Rangers organization. And then also Josh Johnson, which is in the Tampa Bay Devil Rays organization. He's actually at the Durham Bulls right now, AAA. There's one of the Yankee players, Gary Sheffield. Justin Morneau, the Minnesota Twins, which he's pretty hot right now. Good player. Brad Eldred, he's played with the Pirates. Over here's Javi Lopez's of the Baltimore Orioles. It's one of his bats.
Really? Now, is the finish all cosmetic? Is it, or are there actually properties to the?
Well, you're going to see when we go through the tour of where we finish them. It does help to have finish on it because what happens is it becomes a little bit harder. We do provide a lot of bats that are unfinished, which will have no finish on it at all, but we actually use some lacquers that actually coat the bats to make it a little bit harder.
Wow, this is nice.
So you see some different colors here.
Yeah, look at the size of it. Now, what's with the size?
I like the coloring.
Yeah.
Well, one thing that I was telling you earlier is a lot of these guys want little different things with their bats. That's why we have over 250 different models in our master cabinet, where we keep our master copies. But like this player here has a big knob here. You can see the difference between the knobs.
Oh, yeah.
Now, a guy like Javi here has a small knob, where this guy here, you know, Javi kind of likes the weight being up in the barrel. You know, he's a strong guy using a short bat, so he wants to have the weight up there. Where this player here likes to have the weight distributed down the bat. And so when you have this bigger knob here, some of the weight is going to be down here. And so it's not quite as top heavy in the balance in the field. You know, in terms of the weight isn't distributed up at the top where the barrel's at, it's distributed down here.
Well, now you mentioned the sweet spot. What is the sweet spot?
A sweet spot is the area where when you hit the ball, it'll go the furthest.
Well, how do you know where that is?
Well, you can do a little test on it. Typically where you're going to see it is when you see us make the bat itself, I'll show you where the grain, it depends on how the grain is running in the wood. And what you'll have is you'll have it basically on the side of, like right here's the logo. Right here to right here is the area where the sweet spot's going to be. And without testing it, you're not going to know exactly, but you're going to know it's going to be in that area. Now I'm going to show you in the tour why we put the logo where we do. We put it on the weakest surface of the bat, and right here is where the grain will run straight, where that's going to be the strongest surface.
What is the advantage of wood over aluminum?
Well, if you can hit with wood, you can hit with aluminum. It's very much harder to hit with a wood bat than it is aluminum bat. So if you can train with a wood bat and be able to hit the sweet spot with regularity with a wood bat, you get an aluminum bat in your hand, you'll be able to really hit the ball. So a lot of players, even if they don't use them in their leagues, will train with wood bats, such as college players, high school players.
So a billet is a bat before it's a bat. Right?
Right. It's a piece of wood, it's a circle. You can see here, we knock the edges off, and you'll see that in the milling process. 80% of the bats are made out of maple, and what we'll do is after they come down from the mill, they've already went through 4 levels of selection. You know, what the best wood comes into bats, the stuff that doesn't require the say specifications to become a bat gets turned into those products, such as flooring, furniture, grade stuff. You don't need straight grain or particular weights for furniture products or flooring products. So what we'll do is this already went through 4 stages, what you saw at the mill level. When it comes down here then, what we'll do is we'll take the billet and we weigh them. Different size bats and different dimensions of bats will come out at different weights of billets.
That thing's heavy. I noticed that.
Well, this one here is actually one of the lightest ones you'll see in here. This is 5 pounds, 0.8 ounces. So it's important to be able to read a scale, first and foremost, down here at the Bat Factory. That was all maple. This is ash.
My goodness. Now what's the difference in weight? It's pretty much the same?
Well, the ash is a little bit lighter in terms of the density, so it's not quite as heavy as the maple.
Right.
But what you see, the main difference between ash and maple is here you see the grain. It's very pronounced. You can see the growth rings. Definitely. Whereas in the maple, it's a much denser wood, much heavier wood.
Oh, heavens, yeah.
So you don't see as many grains. Because it's denser, you're going to see a little more distance with the ball coming off the bat.
So this is going to be a little faster, though, because it's lighter?
Yeah, it's a little easier to handle, and a lot of players like that in the ash. You also get a little more trampoline effect. The bending qualities in ash is a little better than it is in maple, so you'll get a little more bending when you hit the ball to create whip action.
That's interesting.
There are pros and cons to both types of wood. What we use is 2 copy lays, and it's just very similar to copying a key. If you take the master copy and put it on the back of the lathe, and there's a little eye that will follow the contour of the bat, the dimension of the bat, and duplicate that to an exact copy of, you know, we'll say the master copy. One takes a deep cut, and one takes a nice little smooth finish cut. That way you don't weaken the wood by cutting all at once. Okay, after the bat is turned on the lathe, he'll cut the ends off. That was where the piece of wood was being held in the steady rest for the lathe. And what he'll do then is weigh it and make sure it's which sort it'll go to. And when he runs bats, he'll, you know, a certain weight goes to certain players. But here you see a bat that's ready to be finished. But these here are very good machines. They make a bat every minute and a half.
Really?
And typically we'll make 150 to 160 bats a day.
No kidding. How many bats do you move in a year?
We'll probably do 32 to 33,000 this year.
Wow!
We started the first year at 1,800, and you know, this is our 5th year, so we're moving up each and every year. You see here, this is a maple bat that's just been made on the lathe, as you saw it.
Right.
And you can see this little...
Still got a knob on there.
Yeah, still got a little bit there.
And on the end, too.
On the end. And you'll see us sand this off. And also, you'll see us sand... If you touch it, you can still see it's a little bit rough.
Yeah, it is.
But we'll
You'll
sand
feel
it.
some bumps in there,
Yeah,
too.
you'll see some bumps, and that's where it got cut with the knives, basically. But you'll see where, in the next process, where we sand that, make it nice and smooth, so that when we finish the bat, the paint and the lacquers will take to the wood better, the better we sand it. And this is an industrial sander which operates with a wheel, and these cups, the bats will go inside the cups here, and as they're inside the cups, they'll spin. And you can see here there's 4 tiers of sandpaper. You'll have a rough grit, a medium grit, and a fine grit. Those are little brooms that are behind it, supports it, so it keeps it from ripping the paper up, and also giving some resistance to make it where the bat will sand itself, basically. This is where we put the logo on the bat. What this is a pad printing machine, and you can screen anything on any material, basically. T-shirts are done with this machine, screening T-shirts, glass, plastic, various things. We just happen to screen logos on wood bats with this. But we'll put the logo in the weakest surface of the bat. And as you can see here, the grain here, you can see why it's wide open, where over here you can see how it's straight. This is the strongest part of the wood, this is the weakest part. So what we'll do is we'll put the logo on the weakest surface of the bat, so that when the player uses it, he has a guide to know where the strong point is and where the sweet spot will be. We can put a logo on a bat, we can engrave a name, you can see a model number.
It's about 3 seconds for that to dry. Once it dries, it's under primer, it won't come off. It's a fast drying ink. Then over there where they dip the two paints together, because they are dipped, they're never exactly in a straight line. So we take care of that up here. But the bat is, the wheel will come down against the bat, start the bat spinning. As it's spinning, he'll take a small paintbrush. He'll put the 2 stripes on there, and that's what brings it together. Then someone buys a bat and wants their name put on it. This is a laser. Whatever he puts in the computer, it'll put onto the bat.
We will use several dips to get a nice vibrant finish. We're well known for our finishes. We put a lot of time and money in this. This is all a hand done process. We'll maximize the look, but it also helps to provide some extra performance to the bat. What we'll do is we'll actually dip the bat right down into the paint. You can see that we mix it up before we do that, and each dip of color will get at least 2 to 3 finishes. That way we get the best look to it. Some of the base colors we use are represented here. You see the black, we have 2 shades of brown. This is the light brown, we call it mahogany. We have a cherry color, natural color of course, and you don't see the dark brown, but the dark brown is called walnut.
Right there?
Yes, there it is. Yep. Now we also have some special colors. There's a green, there's an orange, there's a maroon. Now those colors are typically used for our fungo bats, which are for coaches. Teams will match.
What'd you call them?
Fungo bats.
Fungo.
Yes, they use those.
They're the word you don't hear often.
That's correct. That's correct. Today's generation grew up with aluminum bats and have very skinny handles and big barrels. And that's kind of what the players are used to. We'll say is in terms of the design of the bat.
Interesting.
So today you see much thinner handles than what you did over 30 years ago.
Fast Forward is sponsored in part by United Electric Cooperative. United Electric is special because it's owned by its members and is guided by a set of principles that reflect the best interest of those members. United Electric Cooperative members reside within 10 counties in PA, and the cooperative operates an electrical system that spans 7,000 square miles while employing 72 local people. United Electric Cooperative, owned by those we serve. Visit our website for updated job opportunities. Jefferson County, Pennsylvania is open for business with excellent tax-free building sites, a talented and experienced workforce, and business services specialized for your development needs. Jefferson and Brookville Equipment that have made Jefferson County their home. For more information, contact the Jefferson County Department of Development.
There's a group of 4 of us. We're all Notre Dame students. We're driving out to New York to the Notre Dame Rutgers game this weekend, and we saw the sign along the road and it seemed to be interesting, so we stopped for a quick tour and bat. So I didn't realize it took that little time to make the bat and that much time to paint it, I guess.
If it has finish on it, it'll take about 4 to 5 days. If it doesn't have any finish on it, we can do it in 2 days.
Brookville Bats is a great example of innovation in action, and just down I-80 a ways is another great success story. In this segment, we'll visit with Dan Hickman of Allegheny Mountain Hardwoods Flooring in Emlenton. Innovation and specialization.
Custom hardwood flooring company. We were looking at a value-added product of some type. The days that my grandfather cut railroad ties and mine timbers and made a pretty good living. Flooring, and we decided to take that and go with it and focus on a higher end product, one that doesn't look like it came out of Home Depot. Very beautiful.
Basically, we do 2 grades of everything. We do the clear grade, which is very clean, very elegant, and then we do the natural grade.
People are always willing to pay nice money to have hardwood floors, correct?
Because we do get a good price for our flooring, but people expect a good product for that price.
So what makes you guys unique?
Basically, we focus on the quarter sawn products. Basically, quarter sawn is a matter of how we cut the log. A plain sawn board comes out of the log here. Your annual rings will be like somewhat parallel to the face, and you'll get a cathedral grain like this. Like this, okay? That's called cathedral grain. That's plain sawn. Quarter sawn comes out of the log over here. So your annual rings are going to be perpendicular to the face now. Here's a piece of quarter sawn. See how your annual rings are perpendicular to the face? Now with quarter sawn, you've got a different look, but more importantly, your expansion and contractions in your thickness and not across the face. You know, with the increased popularity of radiant heat in new home constructions, everything that's written about hardwood floors and radiant heat recommends using a quarter sawn because it's much more stable. And, you know, your old timers knew that. You take these old towns around, you know, Emlenton, Titusville, Oil City, Franklin, these old Victorian houses, all the woodwork in them was quarter sawn. That's why you've got, you know, pocket doors in these houses that are 150 years old and they're still using them. A guy in Montana bought this off of us and they ran it through a wire brush machine so it looks weathered, you know. This was a piece we did 3,500 square feet for Brent Musburger's house out there. That sample in the corner of the spalted maple went into Oprah Winfrey's house in Santa Barbara. We've done the Vice President's mansion at Annapolis.
What?
This herringbone, like that, 3-inch by 18-inch.
Cheney has a mansion?
Well, this is not his house.
Who would have thought?
Watch yourself.
Donald Trump Jr. was here in this office. They bought 100,000 square feet of that. They bought an old hotel on Park Avenue and converted it into condos.
They come here to Little Emlenton to your showroom. Really?
I don't believe what you're telling me. I mean, you know, what you're out of.
Corey, it's not polite to call your guest a liar on camera.
I mean, it's amazing.
It is an amazing story.
This is very homey and classy. You know, you would think something like that, and the names you've rattled off, I'd expect some big corporate, you know, office in a big city.
Yeah. We knew when we started this that we couldn't depend on housing in western Pennsylvania to survive. You know, I mean,
you know, it's just like the story with Brookville Bats. I mean, they ran into the same type of situation. Traditional lumber mill, you know, hit a snag about 10 years ago when the market started drying up a little bit, and said, how can we diversify and stay alive and prosper? And they came up with a unique niche market.
Baseball bats.
Yeah, exactly.
The reason we decided flooring was, rather than say making moldings. Moldings require your long clear boards, your top grade lumber to make that as your raw material. There's an awful lot of guys that make moldings already. You know, that doesn't solve the problem. What do we do with these little low grade logs? Where a floor like this that you're standing on, these character grade or natural grade as we call them type floors really do. You know, the other thing that's made us a good niche was, through the years, our family has acquired a fair amount of timberland. And one of the things my father always tried to do was to get private landowners involved in long-term management of their timberland. But we're fighting a stereotype in that, you know, you sawmill guys, you know, you're a bunch of crazy-eyed guys with chainsaws that run around cutting and cheating old farmers. So we got involved with an organization called the Forest Stewardship Council. What the Forest Stewardship Council does is they come in, they look at how we managed our timberland, determined that we were managing our property for sustainable yield. We're not cutting more than is growing. Logs that we generate from our company-owned properties go through the system, they stay separate, and we can sell a floor that has got, it's certified that it came from a well-managed forest. New York City, California people, that makes them feel like they're not raping the planet to get, you know, to get a nice hardwood.
Yeah, it's a nice marketing niche.
We're not doing anything any different than we ever did, but now I've got the sticker, and you know, Barbara Streisand doesn't feel guilty if she buys a hardwood floor.
How does today's technology, the internet, how does that play into how you folks are marketing your niche market? Like you say, you're here in the mountains of central Pennsylvania. It's You're pretty far removed from where Barbara Streisand
Well,
was.
I'll just give you an example. This fall, I came in one morning and I get a phone call from a lady in Singapore. She's in Singapore. She's building a house in Bellingham, Washington, about 100 miles north of Seattle. She wants to put a 4-inch wide quarter-sawn white oak floor in her house. Her contractor is saying, lady, it doesn't exist. She found me on the internet. I have a distributor in Seattle who I knew had that in his warehouse. I got them in touch. We had 4-inch quarter-sawn white oak flooring at her house the next day.
Well, I'll tell you what, Corey, we're standing here in the middle of this absolutely gorgeous showroom. Why don't we take a look at some of the products here at Allegheny Mountain Hardwood Flooring.
This is what's called spalted maple, and basically you leave these hard maple logs lay around, they start to rot. These black lines are actually decay, it's a bacteria.
Beautiful. It looks very nice. Who would ever thought?
You basically have to pick those logs when they're ripe. You cut the logs into lumber and you kiln dry the lumber, and it kills that bacteria. It doesn't keep decaying.
It's to
This is
preserve
what
it then.
went in Oprah's house. That particular floor right there. This one that you're standing on here now, this is what we call live sawn white oak. It's a mix of quarter sawn and plain sawn, but we do the hand scrape so that it looks foot worn. Yeah, this would be a 4-inch quarter sawn white oak. That's what went into the vice president's mansion there.
You guys have a lot of beautiful wood. The showroom here is absolutely amazing. Look at this inlaid floor. I gotta ask you, who did this for you? This is just stunning.
The way this showroom came about was naturally a lot of the guys I sell to are these high-end contractors all around the country. And the National Wood Flooring Association has classes that they run in St. Louis where these guys donate their time to go be instructors. One day I'm talking to this one guy and he was kind of complaining about having to go do these classes. And he said, man, I'd love to run my own class sometime, but I don't know where to do it or how to do it or anything like that. And we had just acquired this building. And I said, man, you want to run a class? Make me a showroom. So he flew in here from Terre Haute, Indiana, and we went back and forth with some CAD drawings and things, and he pretty much took the ball from there and put together this bunch of instructors that, you know, like if you were going to a pitching camp and they had Bob Gibson working with the righties and Sandy Koufax working with the lefties. And then we had 2 one-week classes here. We had guys from Seattle to Maine, Florida, Texas, everywhere in between. You know, and I said to my father, I said, this is like Tom Sawyer getting guys to give him stuff to paint the fence, man. You know, these guys came in here, paid to do this class, and we got a pretty cool showroom out of the deal. Now, the medallion here in the center, a guy from California did this, a guy by the name of Dave Marzalak. And Dave is an extremely talented guy. And he knew that Dad and I both have hunted the wild sheep. So he draws this all out by hand. And then he just takes and cuts pieces of wood like a jigsaw puzzle, puts that all together. He brought this with him. He figured he had 80 hours in the medallion itself. And then what he was teaching in the class was this bigger area that he calls driftwood, where it's just all this stuff laid together. And yeah, he said, if you want anything, you know, give me a picture of your mother-in-law. I'll put it in there for you.
Now, one of the things that I find interesting about doing this show, we look at different industries, and when you think of a career in lumber, or woodworking in this industry, you don't necessarily think that you may end up being an artist that's going to do custom inlaid floors. Or as we were discussing on our welding episode, the idea of getting commissions from a city to weld a sculpture. I think it's really inspiring to see this, because when we think of lumbering in Pennsylvania, what do you think of? You're going to get out in the woods.
Top hats, cutting down the trees, loading them up on trucks. I would have never. Is this your office too? Your guys' main? Mm-hmm. I mean, I would never expect an office to look like this. I expect maybe piles of wood here and there, maybe a room like that. But I mean, this was mind-boggling.
So the traditional careers, of course, are part of it, but it doesn't necessarily mean that if you get into the industry that you're going to be working for, manual labor rates for the rest of your life. There's a lot of possibility, upward mobility, a lot of different diverse aspects of this industry you can get into. Tell us about some of those.
That's always been something that's very frustrating to me, because most of the schools around, they're pushing kids, okay, you got to go to college, or else you go to Votech, where they're teaching you how to, pull wires through a house, or how to cut up a pig or something, The hardwood industry.
Tell it how it is. I love it.
The hardwood industry in Pennsylvania is the fourth largest employer in the state. Okay, and none of the Votech schools, with the exception Jeff Tech has a program out there, they're not paying attention to us. So basically, what do I get in my application file as guys that quit school in 10th grade? And it's a struggle to find.
You deserve much better than that.
Yeah. So you go through a lot of guys to find one good one. There's always going to be the guy that's just stacking boards, right? I mean, that's always going to be there. But you've got positions for lumber graders, sawyers, and as everything becomes more computer oriented, we've got scanners now that can look at a log and determine how it should be cut for best yield and things like this. If the Votechs were teaching, had a basic lumber course where they were teaching, kiln drying, lumber grading, log grading, from the primary producer's end of it to the secondary manufacturing and how to set up a molder, how these machines work, how these things happen, and what you have to do. You've got a pile of boards here that you've got X amount of dollars in, okay? You've got a product that you can sell. How do you take that pile of boards and end up with the product with enough money to pay your bills, pay the help, and hope you have something left in your pocket when it's done? It isn't brain surgery. Say, okay, we'll work it in with the carpentry program. Well, it's not the same as carpentry. Running a dry kiln and putting a window in a house shouldn't be in the same program, Running dry kilns is a very fascinating thing, how water comes out of wood and how it's done properly so there's no stresses in the woods and things like this. There's a lot to it.
You mentioned doing a presentation at school. You go out and you talk to communities about opportunities in this trade. Do you find that there's interest there?
I believe so, yeah. I think so. But where does it go from there? If there's nothing at any of the Votech schools, it hits the wall and slides down.
There are many more success stories to tell you about, so stay tuned to Futures as we continue to look at the people, products, and the systems that are providing great career possibilities in this field. Join us at thekinetic.org to meet some of Pennsylvania's leading lumbering business people. Watch more video tours. Networking site that you can use to contact employers and build a great career. Sign up for free at www. and get connected.